What's up, guys? It's Casey Zuckelman, aka the Fourth Sanderson Sister, coming at you with another Hocus Pocus What If video. This one is a little different. I'm in my Christmas shirt. I'm in my Hocus Pocus Christmas shirt because it's our annual Christmas special. So last year, I had Kevin McAllister light the black flame candle, which you can watch by clicking on this thing right here. It's one of the best things I've ever done. But this time, we're going to go a little darker. What if instead of someone lighting the black flame candle, the Sanderson sisters never returned from the dead? What if their ghosts haunted a wealthy man in England so they could make up for a few of their past sins by giving him a hand? What if the Sanderson sisters were the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future that help Ebenezer Scrooge find the meaning of Christmas and goodwill towards man? That's right, we are doing a Christmas Carol. It's going to follow roughly the same premise, but things are going to be a little bit different when it comes to Scrooge's interactions with his ghost. Christmas future might actually be talking this time. Heads up, I'm going to be doing exactly what I did with Home Alone and gloss over a few moments of setup to get to the good stuff, and we'll see some scenes from Christmas Carol sprinkled in here and there. So bundle up in your blanket, brew some hot chocolate, and let's get started. Marley was dead, that much was for certain, but there were far more spirits than he experiencing restlessness during the month of December. On Christmas Eve, the spirits of those housed in the plane of purgatory vie for a chance to lift years from their sentence, but only a few are selected. To take off the years, they must help a broken soul still walking the earth, helping them escape the fate they themselves met. 3 such spirits belonged to 3 notorious witches from Salem's past. For 150 years, they toiled in the throes of purgatory alongside the many other spirits tied to the chains of their past sins. The chains binding these witches were longer than most in the plane. When the selection was made for the soul to be saved, it surprised the witches that they were to assist recently deceased Jacob Marley in turning one Ebenezer Scrooge towards the light. Pray tell, why choose us to assist this man? Asked Winifred Sanderson, the eldest of the 3. Exactly. We know nothing of this man's life, said the second sister, Mary Sanderson. Apart from his greed and hermit ways, he seems harmless, the youngest sister, Sarah Sanderson, added. Because the 3 of you share similarities with this man, replied the caretaker of Purgatory. You each share something in common with Mr. Scrooge that will help you teach him a much-needed lesson. Normally, sins of your caliber would never be forgiven, but in this special case, we're willing to take years off for the 3 of you. In your chains, I will inscribe the history of Ebenezer Scrooge, through which you will discover your shared traits. The history is of his past. Sarah Sanderson's chains glowed first. His present, Mary Sanderson's chains, glowed second. And his future, Winifred Sanderson's chains, were the last to glow. Use this knowledge to help Ebenezer Scrooge become a better person. Help him understand the true meaning of Christmas, even if you 3 don't quite get it yourselves. We've all seen A Christmas Carol more times than we can count in one form or another, whether it's the Muppets, whether it's live action, whether it's motion capture. You know the drill. We all know the drill here. We observe the goings-on of Scrooge in the counting house, Scrooge's interactions with his nephew Fred, his animosity towards Bob Cratchit, and of course the haunting of Jacob Marley. We're gonna just pass through all that real quick because we already know what it's about. Now, the Sanderson sisters were awfully puzzled by Marley being granted his request to save his friend's soul only 7 years into his stead in purgatory. Usually, spirits needed to toil far longer before any requests were granted. After all, they'd been there 150 years and were just being chosen to take off a few. It made them wonder why Ebenezer Scrooge was so special. He seemed like a miserable old, money-grubbing coot who cared about nothing and no one. In another life, they might have liked him. But the one thing the Sanderson sisters valued most was family, and upon seeing how he had treated his nephew, they concluded that something needed to be done. Not to mention how ignorant he was to the needs of his fellow man. They themselves had been paupers before being taken in by Mother Witch. The way Scrooge wished these folks to die was the same way the people of Salem had wished they would perish when they were children. After a very long argument about who would go first in this endeavor, it was decided that Sarah would go first, Mary second, and Winifred last. Each one had one night to change the man's ways. At the stroke of one, Scrooge was asleep in his bed, but not for much longer, as Sarah Sanderson appeared in his room with a rather loud thump on the floor. She wasn't quite used to hovering as a spirit after being trapped in purgatory for a century and a half. Scrooge jumped behind his bed curtains, clutching his blankets tight to his chest. "Who goes there?" he asked forcefully. Sarah got up from the floor and shook it off before trying to hover to the bed. This did not end very well. She took off just a touch too quickly as he called again. "Who is it? Who is there?" Sarah sailed straight through the curtains, across the bed, and skidded to a halt just before going through a wall, throwing the curtains back. "Phew!" she sighed. "Much more difficult than flying on a broom." She managed to turn herself around. "Hello, Mr. Scrooge." This greeting was answered by a very loud scream. "Please do not do that again." "Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?" he asked after gathering his wits. I am Sarah Sanderson." She introduced herself, hovering clumsily over to the bed, where she sat down almost seductively. "Whom?" he asked, and Sarah thought for a second, recalling her purpose here. "I think I am to be the ghost of Christmas past," she clarified for both Scrooge and herself. "Long past?" "Nay, thy past," Sarah replied, "which, as old as thou art, it might be a longer past than I realized. How old art thou?" "That is no concern of yours," Scrooge said forcefully, and Sarah held up her hands in defense. "It was thee who asked if it was a long past, not I," she reminded him. "My time is limited, Mr. Scrooge. May we get on with this?" "Get on with what, exactly?" Scrooge asked, and Sarah started to talk, then remembered she had the power to show him rather than speak. She was going for the sympathetic approach. "We are going to have a little chat about thy past, but this room is much too confined for such a thing." Sarah hovered to her feet and over to the window, falling through it as Scrooge followed her. She popped back inside a second later. "Yes, 'tis a perfect night for a flight." "I am but a mortal man, and will fall. I cannot follow you, spirit," he insisted. "Call me Sarah," she grinned, then held out her hand. "A touch of my hand and thou shalt be upheld by my magic. I promise thou wilt be safe." Apprehensively, Scrooge took hold of Sarah's hand, and her magic surged through his body. He had been watching her stumble about while moving through his room. He wasn't too sure of this ghost's abilities. As she prepared to take off, Scrooge cleared his throat. "Do you have much experience with this flying business?" "Plenty. I've flown on a broom for many a year. I was a witch, after all," Sarah promised. "But you've no broom now," he pointed out. "'Tis true, but I am sure we will be fine. How hard can it be?" Sarah exclaimed, and took off out the window, dragging Ebenezer Scrooge with her. Now, the flight was not smooth, to say the least, but Sarah managed to dodge chimneys and treetops at the last minute. Well, she did anyway. Scrooge never stopped screaming from the moment they flew out of his window, and he saw the inside of more chimneys than he ever wanted to. "Spirit, where are we going?" he screeched after flying through another tree. "Well, I am still trying to figure out how this Christmas past magic works," Sarah admitted. "I am not used to using my magic for a good purpose." "Why did they send an evil spirit to me if Jacob Marley said you came to help me?" he questioned her. "I do not know," she replied. "Wonderful," he grumbled. "Perhaps it is a reflection of thyself, thy choices," Sarah guessed, and then it hit her. Reflection. That's it! Sarah rounded a corner and found a huge window reflecting the city. She concentrated on the knowledge she was given, extended her hand towards the glass, and pulsed magic. It hit the reflective surface and rippled like a pond. Sarah pulled back a little, then shot straight forward towards the window, with Scrooge, screaming like a child trapped in a nightmare, hanging on to her for dear life. "You are heading for a window!" "I know!" They shot straight through the glass and popped out in the countryside, glistening in the sunlight. Sarah was so proud of herself as Scrooge took a deep gasp of realization. They flew down closer to the scene below. Dost thou recognize this place? Recognize it, Scrooge chortled, the faintest hint of a smile on his face. I was a boy here. Oh, thy lips are trembling. Let us take a closer look, if this place brings thee such joy, Sarah said, and started to land. They ended up in a snowbank. Dost thou know the way? Know it! I could walk it blindfolded, Scrooge told her, and they started up the path as a sleigh drove by carrying many young boys. Oh, my old schoolmates! There's Henry and George. Hello, Henry! It's Ebenezer! The boys in the sleigh paid him no heed. Why can they not hear me? We are but shadows here. No one can see or hear thee. We are observers to these past events. They knoweth not of our presence, Sarah explained. Where are those boys going? They are being driven home for the Christmas holiday, Scrooge said as they continued walking up the path. Sarah already knew this, of course, but she needed to prompt the memory of this old man. But one boy remains in this schoolhouse, Sarah noted as they phased through the doors and saw the little boy sitting at a desk. A lonely little boy whose friends have all gone home, and whose father hath all but abandoned him here. At this, Scrooge's faint smile was replaced by a scowl. Poor boy, he muttered, then cleared his throat. My studies were far more important than parties. Father believed so, and that is why he was a successful businessman. It was only right that I studied so long. I hadn't the time for such frivolities as Christmas, he stated, and Sarah caught the disdain in his voice. She saw the bitter look in his eyes. I detect a note of jealousy in thy voice, in which case let us see another Christmas here, Sarah said, waving her hand across the air. The young Scrooge aged into a boy on the brink of manhood, tidying the schoolroom when a door flew open.
Home, little Fan?
Yes, home! Father is so much kinder than he used to be. He spoke so gently to me one night. I was not afraid to ask him if you might come home. And he sent me in a coach to fetch you. And we're to be together all the Christmas long.
Thou hast a sister? I too have sisters. Something we have in common, Mr. Scrooge. We share no such thing, he said remorsefully. Fan died when she was a young woman. She had just given birth to my nephew Fred. I take it that is why thee resents the young man so much. He took away thy sister in a way. At this, Scrooge looked down a little and wiped away a tear. She had a large heart, he sniffed. Oh, I am sorry. There, Mr. Scrooge. I had not expected a tear to escape thy cold eyes. Worry not. I do understand what thee hath gone through, with such a loss. My own father died when I was very young, leaving my sisters and I alone and in the hands of a nasty reverend. You experienced the abandonment of a father and loss of a relative, a witch such as you? Scrooge sounded surprised. I have. 'Tis not the only thing we have in common, Mr. Scrooge, Sarah told him. There were some happier times for both of us. Let us see one of yours. Sarah waved her hand again, and everything changed to a London street at Christmas time. Scrooge lit up like a Christmas tree when he saw the building. I take it thou recognizes this place? Of course I do, you silly woman. It's old Fezziwig's. I was an apprentice here, he exclaimed with the most excitement Sarah had ever seen an old man exhibit, when they weren't chasing her anyway. They phased into the building and saw a rather plump old man squatting on his stool, but his eyes were kind.
Yes, hurry, lads! No more work tonight! It's Christmas Eve! Hooray! Dick, Ebenezer, let's get cleared away. We've got lots of space. I see. May I present?
Such a fun affair, Sarah cheered, dancing a little as the music played. Scrooge had to admit, her energy was infectious, his toes tapping a little bit. I like this festival. Thou had such good times in this place, and I can see why. Reminds me of when I was apprenticed to a wonderful witch, who took us in like thy master did with thee. Thou wert an apprentice as well? He asked her, and she nodded vigorously. You are an odd spirit." "My sisters say the same of me," Sarah admitted, then spied the younger Ebenezer walking up to a young woman. At this, she sighed. "Unfortunately, I relate to thy plight of romance as well." Scrooge turned and his heart sank. "Oh, Belle." Sarah grew grim thinking of Billy Butcherson and how they could have been happy together as she waved her hand, taking them to a sad memory.
The idol has replaced me.
Another idol. What idol?
A golden one.
May I ask, why do you condemn with such severity the honest pursuit of substance?
You fear the world too much, Ebenezer. You've changed.
Changed? Perhaps grown wiser. But I have not changed toward you.
I release you, Ebenezer.
Have I ever sought release?
Tell me, Ebenezer, if this contract had never been between us, would you seek me out now? Ah, no. I release you, Ebenezer.
As Sarah watched Scrooge throw away his chance at love over the pursuit of money, her heart burned with sudden rage. Knowing the way his story played out and seeing it unfold were two different things. Losing Billy had broken her heart, her spirit, and in a way, her sanity. To see Scrooge discard a wonderful woman like Belle, who truly loved him for mere substance, infuriated her. "I lost my love to a jealous sister with a vendetta, a tragedy I could have fended off had I tried harder. But you are a fool to have given up such a wonderful life for the likes of coin," Sarah said bitterly. Scrooge glared at her as his own anger at being reminded of his folly built up inside him. "Like my Billy, that woman loved thee. She cared not for money, she cared only for thee." "Enough of this trickery, witch!" Scrooge snapped. "Haunt me no longer." Sarah did not listen. "Thy greed is as wicked as many a deed I have done in my day as a witch. My chains are long, though they cannot be seen now, but I dare say thy chains are as long as Jacob Marley hath foretold. You dejected soul, gaze upon the life thou could have lived." Sarah thrust Scrooge into a memory of not his own, but of Belle's. He saw her living with a husband, surrounded by many children, in a house he knew they could never have afforded. Sarah hovered next to him angrily as the world around him began to darken, her piercing blue eyes like daggers in his chest. With each word she spoke, the distance between them shortened. "Haunt me no longer!" he shouted at her, but she only pressed more. "Love discarded for money, kindness snuffed out by greed, a lust for power over those less fortunate than thee. You may possess no magic, but thou art no less an evil warlock than I am a witch. That young boy turned into a miserable old sinner, just like me." Sarah shot towards him, gave him a shove through the counting-house window, and just like that, he was back in bed. He was alone. Sarah Sanderson had disappeared back to purgatory. She hovered next to her sister Mary, keeping a bit of distance between herself and Winifred. "He is hopeless. I saw emotion only for a fleeting moment," she informed them. "His heart is as hard as our own." "Sister Sarah, I am sure thou hast done more than you realize," Mary assured her with a pat on the back as her little sister fiddled with her chains. "I shall appeal to his softer side. Often one's bark is worse than the bite." "Unless they know you." Winifred winked at her, and Mary gave her an embarrassed wave before descending to earth, her chains unlocked for the time being. She had a little easier time moving around in this ghostly form than Sarah had, but she needed more than charm to get this man's attention. She needed to show him how his past had affected his present and people's perception of him. Looks could be deceiving, something she, of all people, knew best, for behind her motherly exterior had lurked a very dark and sinister heart. Scrooge was greedy and cared not for the poor and lowly. So, why not show him all the good things he had access to at the same time? Every time Mary waved her hand, foods of all sorts piled high. She cast a warm and comforting fire into the fireplace and used her magic to arrange the furniture of his sitting room in a more homey atmosphere. Impressed with her handiwork, she sat back in a chair as the clock struck 2 in the morning on the second night of Scrooge's haunting. Several minutes had passed, and he had not come into the room. Mary sighed, got up from her chair, and cracked the door open to let more light into that bedroom than had ever been seen inside, and used her powers to pull back the curtains just enough to let the light hit Scrooge directly in the eyes. He jerked awake, and she laughed at his sudden blinding with a wheeze before returning to her chair. Scrooge heard her laughter and cautiously made his way into the room. Come in, and know me better, Mr. Scrooge," Mary greeted him cheerfully. "Who are ye?" he asked, and looked around the room. "And what have you done to my living space?" "Dost thou like it? I thought thy home needed to feel more like a home instead of what dost thou call them? A museum," Mary replied. "It was fine the way it was," he insisted. "I take it you are the second spirit I am to meet?" "Of course, who else would I be?" Mary chuckled. "Although in this case I suppose I'm the ghost of Christmas present, but most people know me as Mary Sanderson." "You share the same surname as the other spirit," Scrooge noted. "Are you related?" "She is my younger sister," Mary explained, but she saw Scrooge slowly inching his way to the door. "A bit flighty, but a good girl nonetheless." "Fascinating, really. A pair of ghost sisters," Scrooge babbled, then suddenly made a sprint for the door when...
Move! I love that. It works every time.
Mary was right behind him in the doorway. "Madam, now see here, I haven't the time for—" "Oh, you're right, Mr. Scrooge. We mustn't dilly-dally when we have much to see this day. All of this frivolity makes me want to get out into the world to see how the other mortals are living these days. I haven't been around since 1693. Let us see how the world has changed," Mary exclaimed. "Spirit, conduct me where you will," Scrooge said half-heartedly. "Just do me the kindness of not dragging me through chimneys and treetops." "Oh, we won't be flying this night. Thou had enough of that. I prefer a more practical approach," Mary said, and offered her hand. Scrooge reluctantly took it, fearing for his life once more, as magic surged through his body. With a quick snap of her fingers, they were standing on the streets in broad daylight. All around them they heard people wishing each other a Merry Christmas. Mary linked her arm through Scrooge's with a crooked smile. "Let us take a stroll through town on such a lovely winter's morn," she told him. Scrooge's whole body relaxed as there was to be no feats of magic transportation at all, it seemed. They began walking, people not even noticing when Mary said hello to someone. "No one knows we're here, Mr. Scrooge, so do lighten up and enjoy the day. Thou hast much to be thankful for, no?" Her words echoed those of his nephew, Fred. They passed a building where the poor were lined up to warm their meals in community ovens. "If you've been sent by those of the heavens, I must ask. These poor people have nowhere to warm their meager portions, and yet you lot close the places every 7th day," he pointed out with a huff. Mary tightened her grip on his arm, causing him to wince. "I am not responsible for such things. I understand thy gripe with the pious, however, as my family was wronged by them many years ago. However, it is the decision of men to close buildings, not the heavens nor the netherworld," she corrected him. "Charge their doings to them and no one else." Suddenly, Mary gave a big sniff. "Oh, I smell children. Let's follow them." "You can... what?" Scrooge looked at her like she had grown 2 heads as she dragged him down the sidewalk like a dog on a lead. Mary was following the scent of children Scrooge knew nothing about, but he soon would, as she intended to use this against him. Normally, she'd be ready to sink her teeth into these tasty morsels, kids, never mind, but as she had a job to do, she kept her mind focused. The kids led them to the doorstep of a very small home. "Dost thou know where we are?" she asked Scrooge. "I do not recognize it," he shrugged. 'tis the home of your faithful servant, well-paid employee, Bob Cratchit, Mary informed him as they phased through the door.
And Martha, she weren't as late last Christmas Day.
Mother, here's Mother. Wait till you see our goose. 'Tis a wonderful one.
Peter offered you to the bakers and collect the bird and take the children with
It's cold out there.
Hello, Father. Hello, Timmy.
Right, where's our Martha?
Not coming.
Not coming. Well, not coming upon Christmas Day. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in church because he was a cripple. And it might make pleasant for them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
The pudding looks delicious. The whole wash house smells like a pastry cook's shop.
Mary reveled in the relationship of the family, reflecting on how life had been when her father was alive. She glanced at Scrooge every now and again and saw him staring at Tiny Tim. This she could use. The boy, while appealing to her appetite, was appealing to Scrooge in a way she doubted anyone had in a long time. Spirit, tell me, will Tiny Tim, I see a vacant seat at the table, a crutch with no owner, and a pain the likes of which I inflicted on many families, she told him, and he looked at her with sadness. At that moment, the Cratchits had a small argument over toasting Scrooge, and Mary cleared her throat. I am inclined to agree with Mrs. Cratchit's thoughts, she said, and Scrooge turned to her in insult. Well, thou art the founder of their feast, but dost thou treat the man kindly, pay him fairly? Huh? I think not. Toasting you would be like my family toasting the reverend who wanted us hunted down and hung, just because he let us stay in our own home. We were grateful he did not cast us out when we were orphaned, but to treat us as he did when our elder sister got her magic, well, it changed us. Her anger is founded, and I hope you take those words to heart the next time you see Bob Cratchit. You cannot simply look at him and see only him, but his family, his son. Scrooge swallowed hard, looking down upon Tiny Tim again. Please tell me that Tiny Tim will live, Spirit. If these shadows I have foreseen remain unaltered by the future, the child will die, she informed him. No, please, no. Well, if he is to die, should he not hurry up to decrease the population of the poor and lowly as thou hast stated? She asked him. Scrooge again looked stricken with guilt. Well, let us allow them some private time. You had an invitation to a dinner party, did you not? Let us be in attendance. Mary snapped her fingers, and they appeared in Fred's house.
A rather disagreeable animal.
Yes.
A savage animal?
Yes.
Oh, wait. Is it an animal that grunts and growls?
Yes.
And lives in London?
Yes.
A horse?
No.
A cow?
No.
A dog?
No.
A pig?
No.
An ass?
Yes and no.
Oh, I know who it is, Fred. I know. It's your Uncle Scrooge.
Yes!
I have no patience with him, Fred.
Oh, I have. I'm sorry for him. He's certainly given us plenty of merriment, that's for sure, and I think it would be ungrateful not to drink to his health. He wouldn't take it from me, but he may have it nevertheless.
As they dissolved into the dark streets of London, Mary let out a contented sigh. Oh, what fun those games were, do you not agree? I was the butt of their jokes, I think not, Scrooge huffed, feeling a bit bedraggled at this point. I want to go home. The soft sell had been working up to now, but Mary really needed to drive a point home before handing the reins over. Thou wert ignorant to people's opinions of thee. You saw yourself as an ordinary man with no outward effect on the lives of others. Have thy feelings changed? I see now that I do not care for the opinions of others, he replied stoically, but Mary knew he was lying. She got an idea. Now again, I say, I want to go home. What thou wants, thou dost not always get. Thy ignorance to the feelings of others is what landed thee here in the first place. She suddenly took another big sniff, and a grin emerged on her face. I smell children, Scrooge looked around at the empty streets. "I see no children," he said. "Oh, look again," Mary said sinisterly, pointing behind his back, as she let a little magic create something for her. Scrooge turned around and saw two malnourished, feral children staring back at him. "Merciful heavens! What are they? Are they children?" he inquired. "Yes, the children of men like thee, who hath closed off their hearts to all around them. The boy is called Ignorance, the child of someone who turns their nose up at the suffering of their fellow man and the love of the family around them. The girl is called Want, reflecting the greed of mankind and the greed of thy heart. I leave these children in thy care. Let us see how you handle them." Scrooge let out a terrified yell as the feral children leapt at him. They tackled him and started throwing his own dialogue back in his face. Mary stepped quietly into the shadows where Winifred put a hand on her shoulder. The sympathetic cell from Sarah opened the door. The soft cell from you, dotted with a difficult lesson, laid the groundwork. But now 'tis time to terrify this old fool with the hard cell. She smirked and took Mary's place in the mortal world. Scrooge managed to fight off the illusions, only to find he had been wrestling with a feed bag. Scrooge got up, dusted himself off, whirled around to say something to Mary, then jumped back upon coming face to face with Winifred Sanderson. He gulped deeply as he gazed upon this imposing figure. "Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?" he asked. "Thou art. I am Winifred Sanderson," she replied coolly, "the eldest of the spirits. You have come to show me the shadows of events that have not yet happened, but will happen. I have. I fear you more than any spectre that has visited me before," he admitted, "but I know your intentions are to do me good, so lead on." "Oh, I shall lead you to places thou hast never dreamed of," Winifred said. She slowly waved her arm, and her long sleeve whipped a new day into beginning.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe, or sometime Christmas Day.
I thought he'd never die.
What's he done with his money?
He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know.
It is likely to be a cheap funeral. For the life of me, I can't think of anyone who'd want to attend it.
Well, I don't mind going, if lunch is provided.
Yes.
Seems to be the one they speak of was not much of a friend to them. They speak of him with disdain in their voices, he agreed. What a poor wretch. Wretched soul is more like it, Winifred huffed. Seems fit that we move along to the next place now, as it is growing late. She was right. The world had indeed grown dark suddenly, and Scrooge found himself alone. Now, Robert Zemeckis, who I'm using as our jumping-off point here, took some liberties when doing Disney's Christmas Carol when it came to Christmas Future especially, particularly the long, drawn-out chase scene. It didn't really serve much of a purpose other than to scare the heck out of audiences and show off some pretty mind-blowing 3D effects. However, given our Ghost of Christmas Future is Winifred Sanderson delivering Scrooge with her hard sell, I'm actually gonna leave in that whole thing for our version of the story, because she would put him through that BS just to mess him up, and you can't tell me otherwise. So enjoy the montage! Scrooge hit the floor of the trader's shop next to Winifred's boot. She chortled to herself as Scrooge watched his housekeeper selling his wares while gloating about how she stole them all. "I must say I like her," Winifred snickered. "Ambitious and knows what she desires while getting the best of a man with no qualms about treating people like sludge." "You act as if she's in the right stealing from me," he commented. "Perhaps she is. It isn't as if thou hast treated her with any kindness beyond providing her with an underpaying employment." Scrooge gulped as Winifred glared at him. "Thievery is never the answer." He stood his ground, though his knees knocked together a bit, as Winifred grinned evilly. "How right thou art," she agreed, then waved her sleeve. "Let us see how others react to the death of this mysterious man."
Hope. Only if he relents.
He is past relenting. He is dead.
Dead. Oh. To whom will our debts be transferred?
I don't know, but by then we'll have the money, and even if we don't, it's unlikely any new creditor will ever be so merciless.
Why do so many celebrate the death of another? Why are they so joyous over the demise of this man? He asked her. "You really are an idiot." She rolled her eyes, waving her sleeve again, dousing them in shadows until they re-emerged in a dark bedroom. Scrooge was starting to get the picture as he saw a lump under the covers of the bed. "I understand, Spirit, the case of this unhappy man may as well be my own," he said, but Winifred extended a finger, her talon-like nail pointing at the bed. "Look," she said darkly, and Scrooge turned around slowly with a gulp. I know what is underneath that sheet. It is the body of the man whom no one mourns." "Look," she said again, a little more forcefully, using her magic to slowly draw back the sheet. Scrooge's knees knocked together. "I would like to, but I have not the power. Please, show me some emotion related to death, or this bedchamber will haunt me for the rest of my days," he pleaded with her. "Emotion related to death, you say?" She chuckled under her breath. "Fine, then." With a wave of her sleeve, they appeared in the Cratchit home. Winifred knew Scrooge had started to feel for that child, and it was time to break this man's spirit.
"It's late. Past your father's time. He's walked slow these last few evenings. You went today, then?"
Yes, my dear. And I promised him I would walk there every Sunday.
Winifred stood with her arms crossed as Scrooge looked upon the body of Tiny Tim and his mourning father. "Spirit, I gather that our time of parting is at hand. Tell me, who was that man we saw lying dead?" "You tell me you have not yet figured it out?" Winifred shouted. "After all we've shown you these nights!" With a wave of her sleeve, Ebenezer Scrooge watched as the home of Bob Cratchit was blasted away in a blizzard of snow, thunder, and lightning. Winifred's own lightning zapped the man backwards into a tombstone as they were suddenly in a graveyard. He hit the ground hard, rolling over on top of the grave and gazing upon the snow-covered stone. She towered over him, glaring down on him in the way she had done Reverend Trask all those years ago. "Ignorant fool, selfish waste of breath, thou hast been through much, but thine own actions have landed thee before me. The chains of mine and my sisters are longer than thy chains combined, but thy chains are as long and heavy as mine. Thou hast stolen from so many people, putting them out of their homes, leaving many to die in the streets of hunger and cold. You ask me who that man in the bed was. Observe! Behold of it!" Winifred shouted, whipping him around with her magic to see the stone, and with a flick of her finger the snow blew away to reveal the name Ebenezer Scrooge. I too have destroyed many lives in pursuit of power. Thou art no better than we witches, yet you hold yourself in such high regards you never realized what that would mean for thy death. No mourners, for no one would mourn such a miser as thee. You curse others with thy greed, ignorance, and lack of compassion, and in return, I curse thee! Winifred zapped the ground beneath the terrified Scrooge's knees, and the grave started to open up.
Spirit, hear me! I'm not the man I was! Why show me this if I've lost all hope? Spirit! Spirit, assure me that I may change these shadows you've shown me. Change them by an altered life! No, Spirit! No! No, Spirit! Good Spirit! Help me! Spirit, I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it on the air. I will not shut out the lessons of the past, nor present, nor future. Oh, pray, Spirit, tell me I may sponge away the writing on that stone.
Without so much as a word, Winifred kicked him into the fiery grave, and when Scrooge hit the bottom, he was back in his room, alive and well. As the Sanderson sisters watched from the afterlife, they observed a changed Ebenezer Scrooge, who finally understood the meaning of Christmas. It wasn't about the money. It was about what could be done with it. It was about the love for one another. Over the years, the three witches checked in on the former old miser and saw he kept the lessons they taught him close to his heart. They smiled at each other as they were granted a reduction of years equal to Scrooge's lifespan. Though it hardly made a dent in their sentence, they were proud of themselves. "We did good," Mary smiled at her sisters. Upon hearing those words, the three evil witches realized what they had done and shuddered in disgust at their actions. Merry Christmas, Coven mates! That brings us to the end of our Christmas special. Honestly, I don't think I could match what I did with Home Alone, but I think this was an honest effort. Let me know what you all thought in the comments down below. As always, if you're new to my channel, please remember to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. It's free. It helps me. What helps me helps you guys get more great content like this. Next Tuesday is our year-end wrap-up stream, so make sure to get your 4th Sanderson Sister memes in ASAP to the Discord and tune in to see some highlights from the year of content in 2024. Thursday is the day after Christmas, so I have decided to not do a Twitch stream that night, but Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be playing more Sarah Sanderson Plays Pokemon Sapphire Randomized Nuzlocke on the channel. Why Friday? Because I got a Christmas to go to on Saturday. If you're a regular on this channel, please remember to drop a like and share your thoughts on this special down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Casey Zolgelman, aka the 4th Sanderson Sister, and I'll see you guys later, and happy holidays.